the term sacred economy seems almost like a contradiction, because usually our interaction with the world of money doesn't feel sacred at all. In fact, usually, and I'm pretty sure this is true in Estonia as well as anywhere else in the world, usually our interaction with money feels the opposite of sacred. For example, having to do things that you don't love because you have to do them because you have to make money, or even things that are the opposite of what you want to create in the world. And that was kind of the one of the starting points of the book I wrote on the topic. Why should it be that money pushes us to do things that harm other people and that destroy society and destroy the planet? Why should that be? Because money isn't something that exists independent of human beings. It's not, some force of physics that pushes us to cut down forests, and to dig mines and to exploit other people. Money is something that human beings create, and we create it through our agreements. And if we don't have agreements anymore about these symbols on pieces of paper, then those pieces of paper are no longer money. Or today, it's not even pieces of paper, it's usually bits in computers. That's what money is. And they are only money because of our agreements about them. So the question then becomes, why have we agreed to have the kind of money that we have today? And how can we change those agreements? So anyway, that was the starting question. And I think even that question is a useful question to ask, because when you start asking it, then money no longer seems inevitable. And today, a lot of the austerity going on is imposed by people who believe that there's no alternative. Because once you're in the logic of the system, in the logic of the bond markets, in the logic of debt, then you have to do austerity. And we see this again and again and again when a supposedly socialist government or left-wing government gets elected to power, promising that they're going to resist austerity. But even in the case of Greece, in the case of Syriza, they were incapable of going against the tide of going against the tide of austerity. And it's not because they were secretly in favor of austerity. They were subject to forces that they couldn't resist. So I'm just thinking how right. So the everybody involved in the system acts as if we couldn't totally remake the system. And in a way, you could say that we're not ready to, and that we become ready when the system stops working, which is, I think, pretty much what happened in the former Soviet Union. For a long time, nobody really believed in the system. Certainly not in Estonia, but even in Russia itself. Probably since the 1970s, almost nobody believed in the system. But everybody believed that the system was unchangeable. Therefore, they kept playing the roles that were necessary to keep the system going. But it wasn't like the 50s and 60s where people, especially, the elites, they truly believed in Marxism. Maybe not so much in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, some of the places are still kind of colonized or resisting, but definitely in the core countries and in Russia itself, the elites believed. Khrushchev said, I remember, I wasn't alive then, but I remember this phrase. He said, "We will crush you." And it wasn't a threat; it was a statement of historical inevitability, because the social system was so superior. And so the elites and many of the people really believed that socialism would win, and they really believed in their system. But by the 1980s, everybody became cynical. Nobody really believed in it in their hearts, but they didn't dare say that because it looked like everybody else believed in it. It looked like it was just normal and inevitable and unchangeable. But then when the moment of crisis came, when the lid came off, and when people started to say, "I don't believe in it," and they weren't shut up, they weren't imprisoned. That was glasnost, When that happened, then the legitimacy of the system collapsed very, very quickly. So I think that we're not quite at that point yet, but as we speak today, a new financial crisis is gathering force, like a storm that's building. And we can see the clouds gathering, the sky is getting darker, we maybe hear thunder in the distance. We don't know when the storm is going to come. It could happen in a week. It could happen in half a year or a year. I don't think it's going to take too much longer than that. And when that happens, then the things that people take for granted as normal and unchangeable, all of a sudden, those are gone. And at that point, we can begin telling a new story. And so that's kind of what I'm doing when I speak about economics and write about economics. I'm asking, what is the new story of money that we could tell? And what is the foundation of that story? Because the story of money that we have today isn't an accident. It is connected to all of the other narratives of civilization as we've known it. And maybe I'll just say quickly what that story is. On the level of money, it's basically a system in which money is created through debt, where the central bank issues money by purchasing bonds and other securities. So when the central bank creates say, I'm not sure what example to use. I'll use the U.S. example. When they create $1 billion, they're doing it by buying a treasury bond that for $1 billion, that because it has interest at maturity, that bond is worth maybe $1.2 billion. So $1 billion is created, and there's $1.2 billion of debt. All money is created that way. All money is created by the purchase of debt by the central bank, which means that there's always more debt than there is money. There's never enough money to pay off the debts. And that means that everybody is always in competition with each other for never enough money. You're always in competition. So there's a good way to understand it is a game that we play, that children play, called musical chairs, where you have, imagine your whole room of people, and there's a circle of chairs, but there's more people than chairs. And the music starts playing, and everyone dances around and around the chairs, around the circle. Yeah, you know this game, yeah? And the music stops, and when the music stops, everybody has to get a chair. And if you don't get a chair, if you're left out, then you lose. You're out of the game. And then and then everyone gets up. You take away two more chairs, and the music starts again. And at the end, there's only two people in one chair, and so whoever gets the final chair wins. That's how the financial system works. It's set up so that there's never enough. No matter how hard you work, no matter how competitive you make your country, no matter how much you lower wages, no matter how many natural resources you strip away, excuse me, there's never enough. And that's built into the system by the way that money is created. The only way to avoid bankruptcies. So suppose I'm a central bank, okay, and I lend everybody in this room €1 million, and everybody has to pay me back €2 million in 5 years because there's interest on this loan. It means half of you have to go bankrupt because I've created $1 million each, and everybody owes me $2 million each. Half of you have to go bankrupt. So how do I avoid that? But well, in the real world, that doesn't happen because in 5 years, I've lent you even more money. I've lent you enough that most of you can pay me back. And who do I lend to? I only lend to the people who I think are going to be able to pay me back, who are going to be able to create goods and services. So the money goes to people who are going to create goods and services. And what are goods and services? To make a long story short, they are things of nature that you turn into products, or human relationships that you turn into professional services. So you may have noticed when the economy is growing, people stop doing things for themselves and for each other. In the old days, they used to do for each other. Maybe in the old days, people would kind of watch each other's children, but now there's daycare. In the old days, people would make their own entertainment. They'd get together in community. They would sing songs. They would play games. They would have festivals. But now instead, they purchase entertainment. In the old days, maybe people knew herbal medicine, and they would take care of the grandmothers would heal people. But now they paid for medical care. These are just some of the ways that relationships get turned into money. So basically, the system works as long as it can keep growing. And the deep crisis today is that we're reaching the end of growth. There's not much left to convert into money, which means that the bankruptcies increase, the concentration of wealth increases, and so on. So this story of money, these agreements about how we create money, these are embedded in bigger stories, and essentially, there's two of them that are related. One of them is a story of growth that says that humanity is here to grow and to dominate and to conquer nature and to make the whole planet into resources, and that all of nature and the material world is basically here for our use because it doesn't have its own aliveness and its own beingness. That's part of the story. And in that story, a growth economy makes total sense. Another part of the story is a story of separation that says that we are fundamentally separate individuals. More for you is less for me. We're in competition with each other. And if you accept that, then again, our money system makes sense. But what's happening today is that we're no longer accepting that. We're no longer believing that we are separate individuals. The consciousness is changing, and we're learning about our interconnection and our interexistence, our non-separation. And we're desiring to come together again, which is one reason why people form eco-villages. It's not only that they want to be more ethical. It's not only to reduce energy use, reduce resource use, and to live sustainably. It's also because we want community again. We want to be connected. We want to see. We want to know the stories behind the faces of the people we see. We want to meet each other again. We want to depend on each other. We don't want to be completely independent anymore, which is that's the equivalent of heaven in a financial sphere, in the economic sphere, in the money world, have evidence that you don't need anybody. You don't depend on anybody's gifts because you can pay for everything. That paradise is actually a hell. And when people achieve that, they feel lonely and they want community and they want to depend on each other. They want to look at their neighbor and to look at the people around them and to know, yeah, I really need you and you need me. I belong. We're together in this. And I think that we have a longing to have that with nature as well, to be connected to the plants and animals and land, the soil, the water around us, and not to be alone in this universe anymore. Alone in a universe in which everything is just a bunch of matter, of material, of stuff. So the story is changing. Our consciousness is changing, moving toward interconnection, interbeing. But our systems have not changed yet. As I was saying before, we no longer believe in the systems and in the story that embeds those systems, story of separation. So one way I like to articulate the new story, which is actually an ancient story and a traditional story, is through the lens of gift. The story of separation says that you're here in order to survive and to reproduce, to maximize your own selfish advantage. That's what biology has, the science of biology has told us. And that they say that the basis of life is competition to survive. The basis of life is struggle. That's what economics has told us. It says that human beings naturally seek their rational self-interest. They naturally seek to exploit each other for their own benefit. And it does look like that sometimes. But, you know, imagine that game of musical chairs again. And imagine the economist and the biologist and the social scientist watching the game and saying, yeah, look at those human beings, they're awful. They're going for those chairs. Imagine that this game of musical chairs, imagine if you lose, you're not just out of the game. You don't get to eat. You don't feed your children. You don't get a home. You have to win. So everyone's elbowing each other and pushing each other, and the strongest are getting the chairs and the weakest are getting pushed out. And the observers, the economist and the biologist and the social scientist, they say, yup, there's human nature. This proves it. Human beings are horrible. They're competitive, they're dominating each other. But is that really human nature? Or is that simply the result of the way the game has been set up? What would it look like if there were, I don't know how many people you have in this room, 70 people, let's say, and 70 chairs, so that there was no scarcity, and that maybe every chair is different, and every person is different. Some people have long legs, some people like a hard chair, some like a soft chair, and economics becomes, how do we give each person the best chair for them? How do we communicate each other's needs to each other? How do we take care of each other? That would be a very different game. And if you have an economist and a psychologist and a biologist watching this game, they're going to come to a very different understanding of human nature and of life. And they would say, look how helpful people are. Look how compassionate people are. Look how they take care of each other. And it's just the rules of the game. So the two questions that come up are, what new agreements could we make that make the game like that? And also, how do we practice to live in such a world? One way, maybe I should move to another room here. We've got, my son woke up. Actually, I'm going to stay here because I'm afraid the internet's not. Anyway, that's the background here. 2-year-old boy. Yeah, so how do we practice for that world? How do we undo the programming of competition and separation and scarcity, and become people who will live in the world of gift. Because the operating rules of reality are very different in the world of gift. In the world of separation, your advantage is my disadvantage, because you're going to compete. You're going to outcompete me for that chair. You're going to outcompete me for the ability to repay the debt. So every country is in competition with each other. Every person is in competition with each other. In a world of gift, it's the opposite. In a gift society, more for you is more for me. Your advantage is my advantage too. Because if you have more than you need, you're going to share it. The more abundant you are, the more you're going to be able to give. And when I am immersed in a society like that, when I see the most generous person having the highest prestige and being the most honored in society, then I'm going to be generous too. And when I see the person in the greatest need receiving the most, then I'm not going to be afraid to give generously, because I know that if I'm in need, then I will be taken care of. And I think that, you know, when we're talking about eco-villages and sustainability, I think that to cultivate this experience of life, the experience of gift, the experience of mutual care, that is even more important than using less energy and using sustainable practices. Because that experience of life makes all of the other practices almost second nature. If you understand in your cells, in your bones, that more for the other is more for you, if you understand in your bones that taking care of other beings is also taking care of yourself, then of course we're going to want to take care of nature. Of course we're going to practice regenerative agriculture, where we give to the soil, because we know that the more we give to the soil, the more we heal the soil, the more we're going to heal ourselves too, that we're not sacrificing, that we're all in this together. That today, for many people, that's a kind of spiritual knowledge that contradicts lived experience. And we're afraid, well, if I give too much, there will be nothing left for me. No one will take care of me. Because that's the society we've grown up in. But now we have the opportunity for our children to grow up in a different kind of society. We can create that for them, so that for them it will no longer be a struggle. For them it will no longer seem like this spiritual fight against human nature, to be selfless, to be altruistic, to be generous, to be kind. It won't seem like a fight against human nature. It'll seem, of course, this is just the way of the world. So on a personal level and on a community level, you can do things to live in the spirit of gift, and to you can almost do a scientific experiment. You know, like what happens actually, despite the fear programming, what happens actually when you live generously? Many people find that the generosity comes back to them somehow. But I'm not offering this as a substitute for systems change, because even if everybody is generous, the system still forces us, gives us constant pressure to not be generous. Ultimately, we also have to change the systems. And I don't think right now I'll go into, well, maybe I'll touch on the details a little bit, because they're coming up in the political realm already. I don't know, like, one reason I'm not as active in economics anymore is that I got tired of talking about what we should do as a society and being like just another guy with the answer. It just seemed kind of theoretical. So I'll just quickly mention a few of the systems level things. Things like negative interest rather than positive interest. So money becomes a burden, and if you keep it, it becomes less and less valuable. Just like possessions were for hunter-gatherers, you had to carry them around, or for a traditional agricultural society, if you kept all of your grain, it would rot, it would mold. So in order to be rich, you had to give it away and create obligations, create gratitude. Money could be like that too, but instead, today money has interest, so it grows, and whoever has the most of it gets more of it, and whoever doesn't have any is in debt, and they get deeper and deeper into debt. But if money had negative interest, it would be the opposite. And negative interest can be implemented in the banking system as a liquidity fee, like a tax on reserves, so that savings accounts would have negative interest. But that's I could speak for an hour just on that. So I'm not going to say more about it, except that it's kind of happening already. As central banks are going to, they've been at zero for years now. And some of them, even the ECB, is a little bit negative now. That's a trend that needs to accelerate. Another important piece is a universal basic income that basically gives everybody in society an annual salary that they don't have to work for. That's your share in the wealth of the planet and the wealth of the culture, which was not created by any one person. The technological inventions of hundreds of years, why should one person benefit more from those than another person? The richness of the land, the energy of the sun, the wealth of our cultural creations, our songs, our ideas. No one person should be able to have exceptional advantage from those things. So the wealth generated by those should be shared. Everybody then gets an income that's enough to survive. You could still work and make more money if you want to, but you wouldn't have to, which means that no longer could we design systems that depend on coercion, that depend on people doing degrading, hard labor for 40 hours a week for their whole lives. We'd have to design systems to minimize that kind of labor. Anyway, that's, again, a long topic. And I'll mention one more thing, which is to shift taxation away from sales taxes, away from income taxes, and onto pollution and resource use and economic rent. And for example, land, energy, natural resources, so that pollution, for example, becomes so expensive that you'll have a big incentive to make things without pollution. Whereas today, the incentive is to cut costs, and it doesn't matter how much pollution you make, as long as you can beat the regulations. But what if pollution was expensive? You know, what if the cheapest product was the one that made the less pollution? Then, again, altruism and self-interest would no longer be in conflict. So those are just a few of the systems level things that I could go more into if you want. But I don't know, like, lately more and more I've been much more interested in kind of the ground level relationship level, community level things, which for most people are a lot more practical, especially talking to a group like this. You know, if you're a group of policymakers or you know, people involved in politics, then I might talk more about the systems level stuff. But you know, you're you know, global ecovillage network. I mean, you're people on the ground creating new ways of living, and I'm sure you're finding that when you live in a different way in one area of life, then it pulls you to live in a different way in many other areas of life. For me, like the kind of eco-village where it's just a bunch of people in single-family homes using less electricity or using, you know, renewable resources, that's not very exciting to me. If they're all, you know, getting up in the morning at 8 o'clock, driving to a job, and coming home at 5 o'clock, and basically living the modern lifestyle, but replacing, you know, coal-fired electricity with photovoltaic or wind power. Like, that's not a very big change, but and I think that, you know, naturally, once you open up to a different way of living, it infects all areas of life. It infects how you educate your children, for example. It infects, you know, what kind of medicine you use, what kind of family relationships and intimate relationships you have. It affects, you know, how you source your food and how you communicate with other people even. It's not an accident that people who are attracted to eco-villages and attracted to permaculture are also attracted to nonviolent communication and attracted to restorative justice and circle processes to resolve conflicts. They're all part of the same thing. They're all part of the same story. Hey, Carrie, sweetie. Carrie, Daddy's on a call, and people are going to have trouble hearing if they just hear you squeaking. So let's not squeak, okay? Okay. Yeah. So here's an example, you know. In the old story, the way that you change reality is by exercising force over it, by controlling it. The way that you win an argument is by dominating the other person, overcoming them with logic and evidence. The way that you win an argument is by shouting or by manipulating somebody with your emotions. And that mentality mirrors perfectly the domination of weeds and insects with chemicals. And it mirrors perfectly the domination of the body with pharmaceutical drugs. And it mirrors the economic domination of other people through the weapons of debt. So when we begin changing out of that story, then it affects everything. So instead of dominating my child, I have him try to understand what it's like to be me, and I try to understand what it's like to be him. That's a practice of non-separation. And when we apply that to nonviolent communication, for example, we understand that if somebody is in conflict with me, if somebody is being maybe aggressive or doing something I don't like, it's not because they're evil. It's not because they're an enemy. It's because they have a need that is unmet. And if I were in their position, I would be doing the same thing. So let me understand what it's like to be you so we can meet this need. If somebody harms somebody else in the old story of control, we have to punish them. We have to deter them. We have to make it so bad to hurt somebody that you won't do it. But in the new story, we seek to understand what is the totality of your circumstances that brings you to do this. So this, or even in agriculture too, if there's, if your tomatoes are getting choked by weeds or eaten by insects, or they're not growing well, you might say, oh, what are the circumstances that are causing this? What deficiency is in the soil? How can we help you thrive, rather than how do we kill the insects and how do we kill the weeds? But we see these things as symptoms of a deeper problem. So all of this, the new economics is part of the same movement as many of the other things that I'm sure that you're interested in the eco-village movement. It's all part of the same transition in our stories. And I guess I'll mention education too. Like in the normal society, school is basically practice in overcoming your human nature. The child doesn't want to go to school, doesn't want to sit at a desk, doesn't want to fill out worksheets, but you exert pressure in the form of grades and examinations and your permanent record, your resume, so that you can, with these rewards and punishments, you can make the child do what he or she doesn't really want to do. Anyway, my point is that things like gift economy and translating gift economy into new systems, that's part of a new story. A story that I use the term that Thich Nhat Hanh uses, interbeing, to describe the new story, the new and ancient story. That essentially says that on some level we're not separate, that maybe we are the same being looking at the world through different eyes. That says that I'm not separate from the universe. That says that anything I do will come back to me inevitably, inescapably. That anything that we do as humanity will come back to us. That anything we're doing to the whales or to the mountains or to the rivers or the soil is happening to us too. That anything we do to another country or another people, we're going to be doing to ourselves inescapably, which is something my country does not understand. My country thinks that we can bomb people and drone people and invade people, and if we build a high enough wall and complete enough surveillance systems so that we can kill any human being with the touch of a button, then we'll be able to protect ourselves from what's happening out there. That's what my country seems to think. And we're learning that it's not true, that the violence that we are perpetrating abroad mirrors as domestic violence. And you've probably seen the news, all the shootings in America, like people like coming with guns to the schools, shooting people in schools, shooting people in movie theaters, shooting people on the news, just and in the home, like tremendous domestic violence in the home too. Husbands beating children and wives and just violence everywhere. In the story of interbeing, we realize that that's inescapable. That if we are committing violence, we will suffer violence. That anything that's happening to any being is happening to ourselves. And even in relationships, that if there's someone in our lives who is doing something that we judge negatively, that's showing us something in ourselves as well. And one more aspect that I'll mention of the new story, which I think is really important, which is that the quality of beingness, the quality of consciousness, intelligence, and aliveness is not only in human beings. We've been expanding it. In my country, for a long time, it was only white male human beings that were fully human. And then we expanded that to include black males too, and white, and to include women, and to include people that we had called primitive. We expanded full beingness to include them. And then now some people want to expand that to animals too, and say animals have a full experience of being and need to be treated with dignity and respect. And now it's even expanding to plants too. There's incredible, mind-blowing research about plant intelligence now, and even plant consciousness, and plants' ability to suffer and to feel emotions, to feel something like emotions. Indigenous people completely believed that all beings, humans, animals, plants, even rocks, rivers, soil, mountains, had beingness, had aliveness, had soul. And I think that this is a really deep part of the new story, to extend beingness to all things. And to no longer treat them as instruments of our own advantage, but to enter a mutual relationship of giving and receiving, which isn't to say that you would never cut down a tree or eat a living being, but it's to understand that as we receive, so we also need to give. We need to never do these things lightly. To understand that there are consequences, to understand that we are all in this together. So this obviously has, economic significance. Really, because at bottom, what is economics? It's how we take care of each other, and when we expand each other to include ecology, then it's how do we take care of the world, and how do we give and how do we receive? That's the essence of economics. So to bring it back to eco-villages, that's the question to ask. How do we give to each other, and how do we receive from each other? How do we do that in a way that recognizes that we're all in this together? And how do we create ways of living together so that more for you is more for me? And this is not a trivial question, Some communities try to do it without any rules or boundaries, and then maybe somebody comes along and just takes advantage of everybody else. Gift societies were not like that. If somebody wasn't contributing, if somebody was greedy and selfish, then nobody would want to give to them either. And they would end up being poor and alone. So I'm not advocating indiscriminate giving. There needs to be some kind of social system that encourages the impulse to give, that understands that that's natural, but that it also needs encouragement, and that has ways to mirror that giving, so that those who are generous receive generosity as well, and that their generosity is witnessed by society, that it's seen. So I think I'll end with that for the moment, and just leave some time for if anyone has any comments or thoughts. that you want to share with me? Questions?
Thank you, Charles. Actually, what's the time over there, where you are geographically?
It's 9:20 in the morning, right here, 9:25.
We are really grateful that you woke up so early, and I think you giving this talk in your normal life situation, it's really it's really nice, I would say. So if there are any questions, just raise your hands. But I have also one. You mentioned politics. I've been also thinking about politics. I've been in politics for a while. Coming or going forward from sacred economy, can you imagine something like sacred politics?
Mm-hmm. Sacred politics.
Yes.
Yeah. Sacred politics is politics where you no longer seek to destroy the enemy. I notice when I read political websites, sometimes I go into the comment section where people, write comments on the articles, and whether it's a liberal or a conservative website, the comments are the same. Essentially, they are those stupid, horrible other people who disagree with us. What's wrong with them? If only they were as smart as us, if only they were as moral as us, they would agree with us. Both sides agree that the other side is stupid and immoral. Well, what if both sides are wrong? What if the problem is the posture and the attitude and the strategy of destroying your opponent in order to win? That's the strategy we use in modern medicine, in modern agriculture, and in modern politics, and in geopolitics, destroy the enemy. And everybody thinks that they're on the side of good. So perhaps the problem is the whole conception of the war on evil and making the world a better place through destroying evil. I'll just throw that thought in there.
Yeah, thanks. So, any questions? And you have to come here, I think, to ask the question. Or if you want me to translate them, then I'll try.
Kas te oskate mõne näite kokkuvõttes, kus kingimajandusest on
Can you bring any example of a community where, or any organization where the gift economy is already in the works?
Well, most indigenous communities have operating gift economies. And probably, if you go to a very remote traditional village in Estonia, you'll find a lot of gift economies still operating. You'll find neighbors taking care of each other, people who know each other, people sharing the things that they produce. They probably brew their own alcohol in traditional villages in Estonia, yes?
They do, yes.
Yes, and you don't keep that all for yourself. That kind of thing is shared. So I don't think that we necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. I think that part of this transition is to value the things of the past and to learn from the wisdom of the past. So it's not about some really smart guy coming up with the perfect, the mathematically perfect sharing platform
and then convincing everybody to use it. You know, it's a lot more messy than that. So there are eco-villages that are doing radical experiments in gift economy. Twin Oaks, for example, in the United States, you know, everybody there shares their income with the community. You don't even get to keep your own income. And, you know, there's probably a shadow side of that. It's not without problems, but it's a bold experiment. I kind of like any bold experiment. And even if you don't get it right, you know, it still feeds into the collective mind, and we learn from it. But I cannot point to any intentional community on Earth and say, yeah, these guys have it right. But I think, and also I think it's important to remember that each place is unique. So Estonia is unique. You have a unique Earth energy in Estonia. You have a unique cultural background. And so rather than look outside to find the best model to bring in, you can still learn from outside models, but also draw on the wealth that already exists there. And I just think it's really important, you know, eco-villages that are separate from the surrounding culture don't do as well. If there's enmity between the hippies in the eco-village and the normal people outside the eco-village, then that's a lot of, then the eco-village doesn't have roots. You know, you need roots, not only in the land, but you need roots in the culture too. And I think one thing that separates the eco-village from the surroundings is the attitude, well, we're better than you, you know, we're more ethical than you, we're sustainable and you're not. Nothing is sustainable if it doesn't have ties with the things around it that sustain it. You cannot be sustainable in separation, in isolation. That's not the way, that's part of the old story. That's the story of separation. So, yeah, I think that there may be a lot of wisdom and old knowledge in Estonia, cultural traditions that can be woven into an eco-village model that's unique to Estonia.
Thanks. So, yeah, please come here.
Küsida, et kuidas tema enda elus on see kingimajandus toimunud?
Well, the question is, how does the gift economy work or operate in your life?
In my life?
Yes.
Well, I mean, in some very mundane ways, I just packed up my house, my old house, and, you know, my friends helped me, and I didn't pay them. And the reason that they helped me is because I've done things for them in the past. You could say the community is a group of people who all owe each other. Everybody's in everybody else's debt. I've done things for them, they've done things for me, and they say that when you move, you find out who your real friends are. And so I discovered I had real friends, and so that, you know, I could have paid a moving company to do it, but when we help each other, that's gift economy, very simple. In my work, I also do a lot of gift economy. You know, I put my work online for free and people donate. I do events by donation and things like that. But I don't think that I'm, you know, any special example of living in gift economy. You know, I'm immersed in the modern money system also. In a way, actually, everybody's in gift economy. Because even if you think you're earning your money, I mean, really, like, where did you get the ability to earn that money? Where did you get your physical capacities? Where did you get your life? Where did you get your air and your water? Your whole life is a gift. You didn't earn your parents taking care of you for 18 years. They didn't give you a bill when you turned 18. You didn't earn that money. You didn't earn that life. You know, where life is a gift. And I think that's why our deepest human nature is actually giving, gratitude, generosity, because we know, on some level, we all know that life is a gift. We didn't earn our lives. We didn't earn our bodies. We didn't earn the water. We didn't earn the sun. We didn't earn the soil. It wasn't through our hard efforts that we created these things. They were all gifts. And so because we've received so generously, we want to give. You know, we want to make a gift of our lives. We want to do something meaningful. We want to make a difference. No one is content with merely being rich and having a lot. The richest, wealthiest person will start to want to give to society. They might be afraid to, but the desire is there.
Võiks küsida, et kas ta näiteks on intervjueerinud või küsinud kellelgi USA tänapäeva mõistes miljonäri, mida tema see inimene arvaks näiteks kingimajandusest.
Have you interviewed or discussed with some US millionaire or billionaire? What does he or she think about your ideas and gift economy?
Oh yeah, actually there's quite a lot of very wealthy people who have read my book and are interested in this. And they often feel kind of trapped. You know, if you have, so imagine if one of you has $1 billion. It's not that easy to use it in a beautiful way. What are you going to do with it? You know, you could give $1 billion to some organization, but what organization can metabolize so much money and use it well and not be poisoned by that amount of money? Or you could buy a huge amount of land with it, but then what are you going to do with that land? Are you just going to let it go wild? Or are you going to invite people to live on it? And then if you invite people to live on it, what kind of governing structures are you going to use? You know, what kind of community are you going to create? How are you going to persuade government to allow you to do the things that you're supposed to do and that you want to do in that land? I mean, it's not easy to use money beautifully. So it's, I call it a dharma, the dharma of wealth. Plus, of course, people are afraid to really let go of their money. And so am I going to tell them, well, you know, you should just let go of it. You should give it all away. That's part of conquering the self. That's part of the mentality of doing this big heroic thing and overcoming nature. And I'm going to overcome myself. I'm going to conquer my greed and conquer my fear. But, you know, I advocate a more gentle approach. So when I speak to somebody in that situation, I might say, well, you know, what's the natural next step? What is inviting you to take a deeper step into generosity? Something that you're ready for, something that might feel a little scary, but you're ready for it. What would that be? And what's the thing that you're not quite ready for? You could ask yourselves that too. What is the next step into generosity that I'm ready for? And what's the next step that I'm not ready for? Because this, whether you have money or not, the same issue applies to everybody. For one of you, it might not be giving away money, it might be giving away your time. And then there's the fear, well, I can't afford to do that. I won't have enough. Or it might be devoting your learning towards something that doesn't seem practical, but that you believe will benefit others. Or maybe you don't even know how it will benefit others, but it just feels delicious to you, and I want to do this, but can I afford to do that? Is it okay? What's the natural? Yeah, so again, it's the same question, whether you have money or not. What's your next step into the new story that you're ready for? And what's the step that you're not ready for, but you can maybe see it coming on the horizon? Perhaps if you have time after this, you can have a structured conversation. Let me just seed that right now. And I'll just invite you to take a minute or two to think about what's the next step that you're ready for.
So
and what are you not ready for? But maybe someday you will be.
So right now?
Yeah, right now, just think about that. A minute or two of silence. And so after I leave, maybe you can pair off one-on-one and have that conversation, and then maybe share it in the group. I think for many people, it's very helpful to hear it from someone else, you know, especially to hear what you're not ready for, and to hear what you're ready for too. It provides mutual encouragement, and it'll bring you together. So after I leave, maybe have a one-on-one conversation, and then after that, then invite people to share with the group.
Okay, we will do that.
And maybe I'll just, if it's okay, maybe I'll just say one more thing, and then
Sure.
and then say goodbye. You know, sometimes what the eco-village movement is doing seems very small. You know, a few people get together and form an intentional community, and it's just happening in one small place, and world events continue to move in a frightening or tragic direction, and the climate is changing, and all of these big things are happening, and you're just doing your little tiny thing, and sometimes it seems that your little tiny thing, it's not enough. So I'd like to offer a different perspective, which is from the news story, the story of interbeing. Anything that you do has a global effect, whether you can see it or not, because we're not really separate. Sometimes you have the knowledge that your personal, private, invisible struggles are significant for the planet. That if you're maybe having a difficult relationship with, maybe you're, you know, splitting up with your spouse or your girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, and there's this moment where you're like, you know, I'm just gonna go to war against this person. I'm gonna let her have it, you know, I'm gonna, you know, she's so awful, I'm gonna treat her as the enemy, and like there's that moment where you just wanna go at war, you know, and then you realize there's another way. And there's this irrational knowledge at that moment that if I go to war against this person who I actually love, what reality am I choosing? How can I expect that there will ever be peace on this planet if I myself cannot be in peace with someone I love? How can I expect that you know, Obama and Putin will ever be at peace if I cannot be at peace in this relationship? And so there's this kind of irrational but true knowledge that every act has cosmic significance, that you're affecting all beings by your individual choices. And by the same token, the field, it's like a field being generated. Rupert Sheldrake the biologist calls it a morphic field, saying that a change that happens in one place creates a field of change that makes the same thing happen more easily somewhere else. So I think that we can trust that, you know, and trust that the small things that we're creating, they strengthen a field of change that is happening on this planet. Even if your little project never goes viral, never scales up, and no one knows about it directly, it still is changing the field of consciousness on this planet. And in the news story, that is the truth. So, yeah, just like to encourage people to trust that. And to let go of the, well, it's not enough. Yeah, and to trust the knowledge that what you're doing is important, and worthy and significant. I know that it is. Okay, so yeah, thank you everybody, and have a great conversation.
Thank you. And it's really beautiful to end on this encouraging note, and yes, we will do as you proposed. I think that's a very good continuation now into our process here. So thanks a lot, Charles, for waking up so early and really you had to focus on giving this talk, and I hope the rest of the day will be easier now.
It was my pleasure.
Okay, thank you. So wave.
Okay, bye-bye.